Alafia, Ekabo, welcome everybody. I am LetsTalkIFA.
And I am Oloyotunji
And this is Let's Talk IFA.
Yes. So we have a special podcast for you all today, and we are in the presence. And we are grateful and we are happy to be in the presence of OBA Adejuyigbe Adefunmi Aladahunu, the paramount Oba King of Oloyotunji African Village here in the South Carolinas.
Orisa, welcome. Ekabo. Thank you. Kabiyesi. Could you take a moment to just briefly introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are, and just give a brief history, because there's many things out there on Oloyotunji Village, but just give us a 5-minute overview of who you are, who your father is, and not was, but is, and just a brief summary of the Oloyotunji Village, Oloyotunji Kingdom of North America.
All right. We are His Royal Majesty Oba Adejuyigbe Adefunmi. Oloyotunji ti Abula Oloyotunji ní ìlú pátápátá ní Yorùbá nínú ìlú Amẹ́ríkà ọmọ Káwọ́jírí láti pàdé wa àti èmi náà bí sí ní Abula Oloyotunji èmi ò ti wá ní Abula Oloyotunji. So I'm from Oloyotunji, and Oloyotunji is the Yoruba nation in North America completely.
There we go. Okay, bye-bye. And how long, let the people know when...
Well, first let me get back to it 2 seconds.
Yes.
I get back to it. I inherited the throne of the King of Oloyotunji as our dear brother illuminated. However, we are the Oba of the Yoruba of North America. So we got to always point that out. The Oba of all Yoruba of North America. The only reason that title is given, or that title is bestowed, or that title is taken, is because the first king of Oloyotunji, when the crown was established, in order to be the Yoruba of North America, you had to have founded the Yoruba of North America. So Oba Adefuntola founded all things Yoruba in North America. It existed in Cuba, it existed in Brazil, it existed in all of the different locales. It existed in Trinidad, Brazil, Haiti, Curacao. However, it did not exist in the United States. So Oba Adefuntola, when people questioned him years ago, they said, well, how can you call yourself the king of the Yoruba of North America? He said, well, because Oba Adefuntola was well at going to write things down. He was going to write a whole dissertation quickly and have historical points in it. So he said, I'm the king, I consider myself the king of the Yoruba of North America, because in order to be the king, he said, I reestablished the ancestral culture. I reestablished the temples of the ancestors. And remember, after the heresy of Akhenaten in Egypt, King Tutankhamun reestablished the temples. So my father saw himself in the light of King Tutankhamun. He established the temples. He reestablished the language of the Yoruba. He reestablished the festivals and the celebrations of the ancestors. He reestablished the clothing of the ancestors. He reestablished the language of the ancient ancestors, the ancestors of the Yoruba community, the Yoruba nation. and we are the Yoruba community subsequently. He reestablished the institutions, the Ogboni, the Men's Society, the Women's Society, the IFA Society. Basically, he reestablished everything Yoruba. And, of course, if you do that, then you become the king of the Yoruba in North America. Yeah, and so it was no problem for him because he was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1928. He was born as Walter Eugene King in 1928, Detroit, Michigan, in October. He's a Libra. So at a tender age, he decided that, well, he didn't decide, something spoke to him and said, you have to go and find the African gods. So he asked his mom, where are the African gods? And his mom said, no such thing as African gods. African gods don't exist. And he said, well, when I get to church, I'm going to ask the preacher. She said, you will do no such thing. You will do no such thing. So he got to church, and he didn't ask the preacher, but him and his brother staged a coup. Because remember, my family in Detroit, they were very good church people. You know? They followed the church. We had a church. My grandmother is instrumental in establishing, it's open today. You can go there when you go to Detroit. It's called the Hartford Avenue Baptist Church. You go there, you see my grandmother picture right on the wall.
Never knew that.
Yes, she's there. And so my father went to that, my father left that church in Detroit to create all of this in which we worship and venerate today. Once him and his brother staged a coup. Now here's the coup. The coup was that they were going to leave the church.
Okay.
He said, we're going to leave the church together. Him and his brother Baji left the church together. And I think my dad was 14 by then. And he went to find Yoruba culture. He saw a National Geographic magazine. And in that National Geographic magazine, he saw a picture of a Yoruba carver and a Zulu warrior. He named himself after the Zulu warrior. Because he said that the Yoruba guy, his clothing was unimpressive. Right. Because Zulus wear all of the stuff and the feathers, and African Americans, we like bells and whistles on things. We want to feel it.
Right.
So eventually he ended up being a Yoruba from that National Geographic magazine. And the question of whether there was an African god or not
was answered.
Yes. So he joined the Catherine Dunham dance troupe and traveled the country. Went to Haiti. And in Haiti, traveling with Catherine Dunham, he saw the dance of the Dambala, the dance of the voodoo. And when he saw the dance of the voodoo, he was like, man, that's some real African stuff.
Right.
Because I'm speaking like him as an African American.
Right.
He was like, man, that's that jive.
That's what he was looking for.
Yeah, because this is back in the 60s, in the 50s.
In the 50s, right.
Yeah, in the 50s, early 50s. And when he saw that, he kept it in his databank. But it wasn't until he was in an interracial relationship with a European woman, Jan DeFries, whose father was a very famous artist. I forget her dad's name, but if you look up Jan DeFries or DeFries, you'll find them. He married her, and she was the one that told him, you got your own culture.
Wow.
Right? You got your own culture. Because she was Dutch.
Wow. Okay.
And back in the 50s, all the Dutch people kept their traditions. So every Dutch holiday, she would have special teacups, special dress, things she would do.
She encouraged him to follow and find his own culture.
Guess why?
Culture and tradition.
Guess why? Because he was like every other black person without a culture or who had been
Right.
taken away from their source. He said that, well, why can't I join you? You my wife. I want to join you. And she said, no, you can't join me. She said, you have your own culture. You have to go and do that. I'm Dutch. You're not.
That's deep.
Yeah. And so from there, she introduced him. Jan introduced him to a guy named Harvey. Harvey was in Harlem. And Harvey was the one who took him to Harlem, and he went to the first Black Power meeting. But see, the white sister, my dad's first wife, is the first wife. She did her own undoing, because by sending my father, with Harvey down to Harlem,
right.
he done met the Black Power thing.
Right.
Got into Orisa, started studying Africa,
right.
and everybody in Temple said, "Man, how you gonna be African and you got a European wife?"
Right.
So my dad said he went home and he said, "Hey, Jan, we have to cut it off." But by then, Jan had went to Cuba and become initiated.
Oh, wow.
You know, my brothers and sisters that came from the marriage have become initiated. But he told her, now you initiated stuff, but I didn't know what I was doing then. But now, you know, Harlem is a little off limits for us, especially in the 60s.
Right.
So Oba Adefuntola went on and started many temples in Harlem, New York, after that marriage. And it set him on a train and a trajectory to go and compile all of the information of our ancestors, codify it, form it into an institution, and disseminate it to the public. So that's why you get the Yoruba temple, the Shango temple. You get the temple in Philadelphia from that. You get Odunde Festival in Philadelphia. You get anything Yoruba in America came from the Yoruba temples in Harlem. Sure. Stokely Carmichael came to the temple. Amiri Baraka was married in the temple. His wife got a name from the temple. The blast poets got all their ancestry work and their names done at the temple. So the Yoruba temple was always the Yoruba concept of putting Yoruba culture on the African people in America was dope from the beginning. Right. So if we think it's dope now, it was dope from the beginning, man. People loved it. They came and it was like, I could talk to my ancestors. And they can give me an answer. Right. Because in the church you don't get an answer that day. You gotta wait for revelations and stuff.
Right.
You got it.
So Oba Adefuntola decided that New York was going through too much in the 60s. There were too many riots, there were too many lynchings, and America was on fire. Right. If you read those years. Yes. Right. Yes. The final nail in the coffin for Oba Adefuntola to move south and create Oloyotunji Kingdom was the shootout at Aretha Franklin's father's church. Okay, right. So Aretha Franklin's father used to let all of the black people come in and hang out with the and do their speech. Because black people we forget that the churches were the first places we staged revolutions. We tried to take over Charleston 3 times through our churches, but then they start putting a monitor in the church. Right. You had a European watching what you said. Right. And so even up to Reverend Franklin days, the church was used as a place of revolution. Right. So I was just explaining why Reverend Franklin allowed the Yorubas in his church. Because he said the Yoruba people are no different than the Muslims or anybody else. Right. And this is Aretha Franklin father, Aretha Franklin daddy. Okay. He said, look, the Yorubas are like nobody else. However, he invited the Yorubas in and they had a shootout. So it was a shootout. The police started it. The police rolled up and just unloaded on the church initially. Right. And so the Black Panthers, not the Black Panthers, but the Republic of New Africa shot back. And the whole shootout ensued. So if you go to Detroit right now, you can see they have a museum in the church with all of that history. And I'm telling you, they got the doors, the old doors that all shot up.
That's some deep history.
Yeah.
So the Yoruba movement was started out of a revolutionary energy.
The Yoruba culture was started out of a revolutionary energy and nothing else. Nothing else. And so Oba Adefuntola, after that event, he said he was under the pew and he remember bullets going over his head, and he said he's getting out of the movement to take over America, to be Mr. Billy Bag so-and-so, to be Mr. Hot Doggy Dog, and to be revolutionary, militant, carrying guns and weapons, thinking you're going to take over America. He said America got too many guns, we can never do it. We have to take the cultural route.
Right. Sure.
The Republic of New Africa established the concept in their mind and in the minds of Yoruba cultural people in America, especially Oba Adefuntola, that you have to have land. Right. You have to have land. Because the Republic of New Africa, of which Oba Adefuntola, and I know I'm going over 5 minutes, but the Republic of New Africa, of which Oba Adefuntola was a part, their concept, their mission was to take over 5 U.S. states. They wanted Mississippi, Alabama, they wanted Georgia, Carolina, Louisiana, that's 5. Because they said that we built those states, we created those states, it's only natural that we own them. Right. Yeah. But they was going to do it with the guns and the military and stuff. And if a lot of people don't know who the Republic of New Africa is, the Republic of New Africa was headed by Omari Obadele and Daidi Obadele. They were both lawyers. And these are the guys that got this whole reparation thing started. So when you talk about Cobra and you talk about
Right.
all of these reparational things, they started with those two guys.
Okay.
My dad joined them to be the cultural ambassador, to bring culture and knowledge of our history and culture. But once he saw the guns and stuff, he was like, pew, I'm going to South Carolina. And so they ended up having a shootout in where was it? Mississippi, with the FBI. And some police were killed. But basically, the police surrounded the house where the RNA was, Republic of New Africa was, and they shot through the house. And back in those, the bullets went through the house and the police shot each other. The Republic of New Africa, they were exonerated, they were free to go. However, my dad said, that's it. Instead of taking over 5 states, we're gonna go get 2 acres in South Carolina, and we're gonna try that. And Oloyotunji was born, and since then it's been a monastery for African culture. It's been a beacon for African spirituality. It is the root of African traditional spirituality, culture, dress, knowledge, wisdom, holistic diet in North America. Started in Harlem, but rooted out of Detroit.
The vision that your father had is extraordinary. If you look at what's going on today, you know, Black Panther came out, everybody was getting dashikis, going to the movies, you know, it was kind of like a resurgence of the I'm Black and I'm Proud movement, right, in a way. And now we're here at this point where now it's actually cool to wear African clothes, right, to wear beads, to do different things.
This done did me. You want to stop it right there?
Let's do that.
It done did me. I should have never touched it, but it was slowly.
Yeah, I was trying
bumped it.
Trying to get you to where we just gonna let it record it the way it is.
That's why I'm
loosening
not
it?
live, boy. This ain't live.
It's good. Yeah, you gotta be ready to go live, boy.
Yeah,
You loosening it right about.
somebody call.
Bend that, you might want to bend that back and then.
Let me get this
You
That's
trying
kind
to
of
get
the
it
position I
forward?
wanted right there, so
Yeah,
I'm
we gotta
lean
get it
down
positioned,
to talk
yeah.
on it.
This glass table is better.
Yeah, this table is all right now. Now go ahead. I'm gonna hold it while you kind of position it where you need it to be.
That's the position right there.
Yes. Video's still going out.
This table has a velvet on it. That's why.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay, where the glass table we had?
That's why it's so hard.
Oh, it wasn't big enough.
It wasn't, but the glass table was broken.
Okay, I won't
We
touch
good
it.
now.
I promise you I won't touch it. Okay, so
Alright. So we just pick up where we left off and boom. So yeah, like I was saying, the vision that your father had was incredible because if you look now, you know, I know when y'all were born here and growing up, it wasn't cool to be African as a kid with African clothes and tribal marks and even where I'm from in North Virginia, if you were too dark-skinned, people call you African booty scratcher. And you didn't even have to know anything about Africa or anything, right? So that, you know, is an interesting dynamic now because now the energy has shifted over time to the point now where, you know, this is popular. The clothes, the beads, when we travel, especially out of the country, we had this conversation yesterday. People hold you in a different regard. They look at you, even other, especially other races. You know, it's like they're curious. They ask questions. Who are you? What's going on? Like, is this a costume? It's like they look in amazement because the Africans are back, and you know, it's just really an interesting dynamic. So let's talk a little bit about where we are now with Oloyotunji Kingdom. And what are some of the things now that you want people to know about, let's say, about Oloyotunji? Let's just keep that as an open-ended question.
well, every movement's meat and potatoes is its roots. Okay. You wouldn't hear any Muslim guy say anything out of his mouth without saying the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, or the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. This way. It's not their own words. They're not making this up themselves.
Right.
They're following a script. And that script is not geared towards making you submissive to buffoonery, especially in Yoruba culture. The script is making you submissive to your ancestors. You can't find a Rasta man that if you play his Rasta song at a dance hall party, he won't say, Selassie High. You know, Marcus Garvey said, you won't find a Christian person that won't quote Jesus, a Muslim that won't quote Allah.
Right.
There was no African Yoruba culture in North America for Yoruba people in a way that they can access it. Because remember, everything today is about access. You know, internet age, access.
Even your father had to go to Cuba for access.
Go to Cuba for access.
To our brothers
because
and
they
sisters,
wouldn't give us
black
access.
Cubans.
And the
They
Cubans
wouldn't
was
give
in
us
America
access here.
already.
Right.
They would
They
not
was
give
here.
us access.
They wouldn't give you access. So he had to go all the way to Cuba to get that access. And when he came back and started teaching African Americans about the culture, here come all the wise people. Oh, that ain't the way you do it this way. That ain't the way you do it this way.
Right.
In the words of the late great Chief Medahochi, who was one of our African American angels, he said, the way you do it is the way you do it.
Right.
He said, since 1619, ain't nobody tell us the way to do it. But as soon as Obayafuntola come out
Right.
and actually have the gumption to teach it to the masses, here come all the wise people. Oh, that ain't the way you do it this way. The way you do it is the way you do it. What Chief Medahochi said is he thanked Baba Funtola for giving us back who he is, because guess what? Thank you for letting me be myself again. I think that's like an R&B song. I don't know which one. But and that's the point, is that we want people to understand the concept of celebrating yourself.
Sure.
This has nothing to do with celebrating one man, because you know it wasn't one man, it's a bunch of people that took place. And
You didn't do it by yourself.
Of course not. But that is what we use as our liege. And after Obayafuntola passed away, the natural thing for Yoruba people to do is to turn him into a deity.
Right.
So when you go to a lot of these towns in Nigeria, they might have a Legba, Ogun, Oshun, but they got a local deities that they only worship in that town, or in that nation, or in that community, or that area.
Important to them, and
yes.
You know.
And a lot of people love to say, well, Oloyotunji is in South Carolina, but I live in Chicago. But you wouldn't have it without Oloyotunji. Oloyotunji is in South Carolina, but I live in LA. But you wouldn't have it without Oloyotunji. So on and so forth, countrywide, nation of the United States of America wide. It is Oloyotunji that is the root, and we have to support Oloyotunji. I've been the king for 18 years, and I've seen African Americans get worse with buffoonery. Everybody want to be a leader. Everybody want to be a priest. Everybody want to be a babalawo. Everybody want to do everything. Done turned the religion upside down.
Yeah.
No, let me put this right. They have turned the movement upside down, and they have installed a religion.
Right.
A religion divides you.
Yep.
A religion draws wealth from you, and you can never benefit from it. A religion creates a whole lot of different sects and fighting. That's what they do.
And that's what's going on.
And that's why at Oloyotunji, I want people to know, when Obayafuntola established Oloyotunji, religion was second.
Right.
Many people disagree. And they disagreed wholeheartedly, and I understand why they disagreed, because we have many dialogues about it with a lot of elders who have since gone. However, culture was the foundation, because culture teaches you the interactions daily. When you wake up in the morning and go to work, from the time you open your eyes to the time you close them, you are participating in capitalist culture.
Yeah.
So everything you do, the way you talk to your kids, the way your mindset, why you are nervous on the road, why you didn't road rage, why you scared for the children at school because you know the children might get shot. That's American culture. African culture teaches you a different thing. Different economics, different way of marriage, different way of looking at men and women, different way of looking at work, different way of looking at occupation.
Yeah.
Just a different way of seeing things. And if people don't believe that Yoruba people have a different way of seeing things, all people do. The Russians do, the Greeks do, the Germans do, the Turks, all of these people.
And
Right,
what
they
you're
have their
talking
view of
about
the
is what's
world.
going on. Go ahead, Bob.
Listen, everybody got their own view of the world. KBSC
Well, own
mentioned
worldview.
those cultures, and a culture has a view of its world, because a culture is a world unto itself.
The culture dictates what language you speak. The culture dictates your spiritual system, how you relate to God, to you know,
Your business, how you do
right, your
business.
spiritual, right? We call people say religion, but it's a spiritual system. As far as what we deal with, is not actually religion, but your culture dictates your economic system. There was a Chinese guy right here, right? And I had something that the Chinese guy, you know, he has a business, and I'm selling, you know, I'm supplying something that he needs, and I'm selling it cheaper than this other Chinese guy. He's not gonna buy it from
you. He's gonna buy it from the other Chinese
because his
guy.
culture says that you can't do
You
that.
gotta patronize your own.
He would be ostracized and from his own community, and they would look at him as a traitor. They would look at him as you bugging. So you can't. He wouldn't buy it from me, right? What dictates that? Their culture.
The culture.
Right? So culture is bigger than the culture. The Yoruba movement is bigger than beads, pots, and titles. I think maybe Obafemi Oragunwa and Calvin has said that first, so I want to give the brother his credit. I don't want to plagiarize him, but I'm saying that's so powerful because now people are too focused on getting their hand to be filed, or all those things are important, but you can't neglect the language. It's been 10 years now, and all you know is a Lafayette and a Lafayette.
Fashion.
Right? You can't, fashion,
Art.
we do fashion.
The
Right?
artwork. Well, we do fashion in the European way of doing fashion.
Even the Yoruba people we have now want to get fly or whatever, but what the point is, they are ignoring, they pick and choose what parts of the culture they want to
No.
participate.
They don't pick and choose. They have godparents and Oluwos and Babalawos that know nail. How the song used to say, you don't know nail? They know nail about the purpose of this particular movement, not religion, not culture, movement.
Right.
A movement is everybody working together towards a common end that we all, and goal that we benefit from.
There we go.
Not yo ile, yo ile, yo ile. It's like the church all over again. So the people who followed my father were dope.
Right.
But some of them did what all black people do. Oh, who he think he is. I can go to New York and do better. I can go to Chicago and do better. And guess what? When I get to Chicago and New York, well, let me not say Chicago and New York because the people watching like, we from Chicago and New York. We always supported the village. But those locales where people went and said, well, I don't need you anymore. I can do this myself with meager knowledge. Which is okay. Because my father cut out on his own with meager knowledge. But he was very diligent in acquiring the rest alone. Not just free fall. So there was a lot of priests, just say it like it is, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and they're still doing it today, and they don't even know where they're getting it from. Separating from the root of the movement and creating their own faction, doing their own thing out of their basement, out of their homes, out of their house, or out of their loft. And quite a few people today is really beautiful. They do have land where we can go, and people don't have to call the police on us, and we don't have to feel like, we having a house party. This is spiritual. What the police doing to shut us down? Let the police come to these gates. We let them in and give them something to eat. So, but the point is that there were a lot of unscrupulous people who did what everybody did in the black freedom, with all of the, not everybody, but all of those people who were detractors in the black freedom movement. They were in the Yoruba culture movement too. Right. You don't need to call any name. Right. But if you want them, you can call me. I'll give them to you based on what I know. Because if there's anybody in the country that know from those days, it's yours truly. Only because I sat at the feet of the elders. Right. Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is that when we continue to divide and fractalize ourselves, here we go again with no true base and movement. So now here comes the scammers. They all can creep in. All the scammers, all the Nigerian scammers. all the 3 billion and plus Nigerian scammers. And there's only a couple of 100 million people
all
in
the
Nigeria,
American
but there's 3
scammers.
billion scammers there.
Right.
And then the American scammers. There's 40 million plus black Americans in America, but there's 80 million scammers. And everybody's in on it now. And what we're missing is those who are becoming elders now, because most of our elders have passed on.
Yes.
People go to their shrines and venerate every day, and we're perturbed by this sometimes. Because it's a sign of black Americans not being diligent about their approach to something again. How many things black people have been through in America and they have not been diligent about it, and look where it ended up. Civil rights, wasn't diligent about it, look where it ended up. Becoming a Democrat, you wasn't diligent about it, look where it ended up. Everything because we're not diligent, and we're doing the same thing with this tradition. So we have priests who are becoming elders today that don't know our history. They know Islamic history, American history, Christian history, but they do not know their own Yoruba cultural history.
Kabiyesi, you grew up in the culture, and you traveled with your Baba. In your words, how did you feel about his work?
Well, how I feel about my father's work is not up to me to necessarily iterate. However, I will tell you this. Years ago, Egbe Shokan Yoruba, Egbe group from Washington, D.C. Big time, one of the premier Yoruba groups of indigents of Yoruba land establishing their hegemony in North America. And they came to Oloyotunji as a group, as a tour, and Egbe Omo Yoruba as well. And they interviewed my dad, and they said, well, now that you have brought all of this African culture and stuff back to the country, and you did all of these things you've done, you talked to people about their history, their culture, tradition, very phenomenal job, Mr. King. How do you feel about it? And my dad said that, and it sounds just like him, he said, I feel like I've only given the black man another reason to play God. Fast forward, when we look at our communities, we see a lot of people playing God. A lot of people playing big dog, big this, big that. Self-aggrandizement.
Yes. Everybody a king.
And that would always creep in. However, look at the other groups. Go to Atlanta, and I talk about this every time I'm in Atlanta, and I talk about the Hindu people. Go to the Hindu temple. If you go to the Hindu temple, they have this big, beautiful temple right there in Riverdale. I'm talking about it look like it's part of the Kama Sutra. And I tell all the little small statues and little intricate designs. Oba Oloyotunji told us at Oloyotunji was that you got to show the power of your God.
Sure. Yeah. I remember that growing up in school in Oloyotunji, he always talked about it.
You got to show the power.
Show the power of your God.
They showed it in Egypt. When you go to Egypt, you see pyramids and corridors and columns. The power of Egypt. Okay. You see what the Israelis did to Israel was a desert. They went over there and transformed the land, started growing oranges.
So we're talking about building now. That's what we're talking about.
You're talking about building. But everybody is spiritual these days, so you got to say things like, well, show the power of your gods. That way,
in your work.
That way they
that's
move faster.
In your building.
Today that's your
work.
Yes, your own individual, whatever you got going on.
Since you say Ile, Oba Oloyotunji, part of his life's work, and a lot of people don't know this, part of his life work was to do away with the Iles.
That's my question. That was my next question to Kabiyesi. I was going to ask you, how do you feel about Orisa Iles?
Well, once again, I got to do like the Muslims do and the Rastafarians do. They say in the words of so-and-so, right? So in the words of Oba Oloyotunji, Oba Oloyotunji said that once he studied the concept of Iles in New York, it was a divisive feature.
Right.
It was a divisive feature. And what the Iles did was create godparents. And godparents were the ones who lorded over people. Because when you say parent, that's what somebody say, boy, sit your bunkie down right there. Right? So Oba Oloyotunji saw that and he wanted to do away with it. Because he wanted a more of a free dome of expression of the culture while you're developing. Because he know that people browbeat people. They put you down. These godparents. They talk down to you. They do you like this. They do you like that. All of the ways that all of us know how godparents have been doing. This is nothing new. This goes back to the 60s. So by Oloyotunji said we need to have spiritual guides.
Yeah.
Okay.
I say.
And you got to show the power of deity and God. You know, if your gods are powerful, then go and show them. And so, if you go to Riverdale, I got to get back to the Indian temple because it's beautiful. You know how many Indian people are in Atlanta? They own a hotel, they own a gas station, they own God knows what else, the gold imports, they got imports, exports. Each one of those Indians go to one temple. Now, we ain't talking about going to the temple just to, have a good feeling, have a bembe and drum. We talking about going to the temple and contributing your wealth from your hotel, from your gas station, from your, that's what they do.
In addition to the celebration in the bembe.
The celebration in the bembe is the affirmation note, period.
Right.
That's the exchange.
And the celebration.
And then they exchange money and exchange and do
By
business,
saying, right.
They do business. Money come out of it.
Yes. When they go and give their offering to Vishnu, and they take Vishnu a hand of peanuts, and they touch it to their head like this, they asking Vishnu to make sure me and him can get that business deal done this week. And guess who is going to benefit Vishnu? Vishnu. And Vishnu is us. There's an Indian place in Dallas I went. I got to use the Indian people. Once again, I got to do it again. In Dallas, there's an Indian temple. I saw an Indian dude. And he said, I asked him, I was like, Mr. Indian dude, how do you feel about y'all having more temples like this around the city of Dallas? Guess what he told me? No. We don't have but the one temple. We don't do but one temple. Everybody come to one. I said, no, I was messing with him to see where his mind was at. I said, y'all need one over here, one in South Dallas, one in Arlington, one in over here, one in Fort Worth. He said, no, we have one. All of us come to one. We are all one. He said, we have the playground, we got the school, we got the backyard, and we got the spiritual center. And I said, well, and he said, guess what, buddy? He said, everybody's welcome. We take a white kids, black kids, all over the neighborhood, we take everybody. And that's what it was. Because at that Indian temple, in order for them to create revenue, guess what they do every weekend? They cook a whole lot of good curry, vegetarian food, and everybody's welcome to come in and pay your little $20, and you can eat a smorgasbord buffet of Indian food.
So we talking
and
about
there's a lot of Indian ladies.
right
The Indian ladies are dressed in, yes, we are. The Indian ladies are dressed in Indian clothes. They're going around, they take, in a Chinese restaurant, they take the tray out and put it back. That's what they're doing all night.
They got the one we just went to, and that was Charleston, right? The Indian temple, the Hindu temple.
Yes, and then we just went to the Indian temple in Charleston, the Hindu Indian temple. When you go in the monastery, they say, everybody take your shoes off. They have a way to greet their gods and goddesses. They have a way to approach them. They have a fellowship. The reason they include Oloyotunji is only because I've been talking about the Indians for how long now? They finally came to me, like, man, we came for you, mister. You've been calling us. However, my point is that we have to see what other groups are doing that are powerful, how they're developing, what they're doing, and how they're manifesting themselves in economics, business primarily, spirituality, holistics. And remember, we are organic Africans. Organics, we can do it better than anybody else. Organic is the root. So therefore, if we can see that, we can move outside of the self-aggrandizement self-centered spirituality, the ego. We can move outside of fractalizing ourselves into a bunch of Ilays that really have nothing to do with each other except, we drum and dance together.
That's so true. That is so true. Because when you look at it, when you have one temple in, let's just say Charleston or wherever you are, that unity creates, when you have a system and you have economics behind it, that brings everybody together. That's the power right there. But when you got 29, if you in Charleston and you got 29 Hindu temples, then you're not going to be as powerful.
It's like church.
Right?
It's like church.
Unless all 29 of those temples
divisions.
have an agreement to come together and do something collectively, you lost your
Black folks
power.
do not go to one church.
Right.
Because they fight and they separate and then they go create their own church.
Like you
So
said,
with religion,
but that's a very,
religion.
hold on just a second. That's a very African thing. To be of your own locale and venerate your own locale, your root, where you from, where you born, where your placenta is buried. That's a very African thing, whether you in the savannah, the desert, the rainforest, or South Africa, or the mountains. That's a very African thing. However, where we come from in this struggle of black people being broken apart,
right.
We do not have the opportunity to break apart.
Right.
Because guess what?
Can't afford
we
to do
didn't.
that.
Now, in order for those Africans,
Yeah.
in order for those Africans to have the opportunity to say, "Oh, we're gonna do our own thing," then you had to have a local leader, a local hero that you venerated, and that was your paradigm of operation. That was your paradigm of spirituality, and whoever that founder was, that's who you went with. No different than the Rastafarians say Selassie and Marcus Garvey every 5 minutes, right? So if you go to different towns in Yoruba land, each town have local Orisa that they venerate that are not venerated in other places. That's because those are the Orisa and the ancestors who built what they have. The Ijebu and the Ondo and all of these people were not always united.
Right.
Y'all saw the movie Woman King? They were not always united, but they became united under the umbrella of the way we venerate those who came before us. Okay? And a lot of it stems from all y'all. However, the point is that when we decide that there is no structure and institutions and temples and businesses, when we decide that that is not going to enter our culture as the main frame, we are turning back into an Ile.
Yes.
Because Obay Fontola wanted to get rid of the Ile concept because the Cuban Ile concept did not
1986.
involve the Yoruba traditional Isheshe concept of governance. Governance.
Systems.
I remember Abba Sejuman saying it in 1986 in a conference, in the Oloyotunji conference. They had a conference, a Orisa conference there. And that was brought up. It was in 1986. Back then, he wanted to get rid of the concept of Orisa, Ile, and God.
Yeah, and that was 1987 actually.
Was that 87?
87, yeah. Same,
Okay.
close enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, 1987. He said, do away with it.
Well, we spoke earlier, Dr. John Henry Clark, the great teacher, Ibaratoron, he said that if your religion or your spiritual system is not helping you to empower yourselves or to be free or to have independence, then what is it? What are you doing? Right? So we're talking about our own schools. We're talking about our own banks or credit unions. That our ancestors have already done all this. Right? The Black Wall Street, Rosewood, all these other places that, they had where they were practicing this. And integration is when we lost all of it, and we have to get back to that point because the ancestors already laid the blueprint. We got to go back and study what they did and how they did it because back then they didn't have a choice. You couldn't go to the white bank. You couldn't go downtown and shop. So that forced us to work together, and we have more unity. And now here we are, like you said, the elated godparents. We're not working together. There's no common
goal. A lot
goal.
of stuff while you're talking. I'm like, bing, 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 bing.
I'm gonna stop now and let you reflect on that. But there's no common. You said it earlier. We don't have a common goal. What is it? We don't have one.
Everybody is doing their thing.
Everybody is too busy trying to be the man.
And on their own spiritual plane.
Pick up on any one of those things that we just mentioned. Wherever you want to go.
Would you like to ask a question? In your book, Dr. Henry.
So the question is, what do you think is the most important thing that we need to do? And you already kind of alluded to it. Right now, as let's say the Yoruba nation of, let's just say North America right now, us here in the United States of America. What's the most important thing that we need to do right now, 2020, going into 2024?
Whenever we fractalize ourselves, which we would do if we call ourselves Yorubas going into 2024, we would separate ourselves from all other groups that exist beside us. We would separate ourselves. And we would become no different than the other fractalized groups. We, as the Yoruba descendants in North America, we find it hard to just stick together for a week. Just to stick together. So we starting with some elementary thinking here.
Right.
Okay? And we start with elementary thinking, then you have to have elementary approaches. Okay? You can't take people all the way to God. Everybody that come through this Oloyotunji gate, they want to get initiated. And I'm the right one to talk to. Trust me. I'll talk you right on up out of it. I'll make you feel so understanding about the history of your ancestors. You'll be like, I never did nothing for my ancestors. I got to do something. Not just venerate them and give them food and worship. I mean, make it happen.
Your action.
Your action for your community and your people, because we ain't out of slavery yet, right? Okay, so
Like going back in.
I'm going a little too far off the greatest thing that could be possible is understanding our history and where we came from. We got to know it. Investment bankers have to study history before they can even study the prospects of investing in the future. You can't get by it. Because whatever happened then,
it affects now.
It affects now. Whatever we're doing now is a product of what happened then.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And so we teach history and culture to people. And part of it is that the God in me syndrome. People say, I'm God, but they don't recognize the God in them. If you God, then you should be composting, you should be growing food, you should be experiencing the light, you shouldn't have a bad look on your face, you should be experiencing the energy of what's called God. You know? And the reason we have to get so many readings, and DAFA is like the most popular thing. Let me tell you, DAFA is the most popular thing. But I was in IFA, and I sat down with the Oni Ife, and he said, we sat down and had maybe like 2 seconds to talk before you had to brush off. And he said, listen, this is what you should do at Oloyotunji. He said, I think you should start establishing the Yoruba IFA readings for people. I was like, dude, been doing we can originate. but because he said, KBC said that, he said that because the Yoruba readings are the best on the planet. He said, I've had all readings from different cultures, but he said the Yoruba readings are the best on the planet. And I agreed. So the Yoruba culture is dynamic, but it's all how we use that dynamism.
Yes.
We have to worship and venerate ourselves. Back to it once again. All of the my Elays against this Elay ain't dealing with your Elay, ain't showing up. I know the fight that's going on because I live in Oloyotunji. I talk to everybody on the planet, about the culture. Nigeria. I talked to people in Spain who got scammed last week. in Nigeria. You know, it's a constant thing that the king have to understand all these different levels of how we're developing as a whole, not as a one, as a whole.
Right.
When I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking as a whole, as everything, even though it drives you nuts and you can never sleep. But you think as a whole. And so when you get places, and for instance, and I'll close on this. When I talk about doing things in tandem and in unity and for the greater good of the whole purpose, has a lot to do with collectivity.
Right.
So I remember the Oshun Festival ATL, 2012. You can Google it, because I had some video dudes out there doing it. And I told them when we was walking down, I couldn't believe how many people were there. And I'd never seen that many people in Atlanta. Because when I used to go, when the culture was in Atlanta back in the day, it was only 1 or 2 Ilays, like Oshukunle and Ile Ori. Ile Ori developed later, but Oshukunle was the main one. So I told him to take a picture. I said, stop and shoot the whole parade. And when we ran the footage back, we counted over 350 people in that river parade, going to the river. And then after that, a year later, ego set in. I'm big, I'm bad, I'm better than you. Oh, I don't want to accept you, and I don't want to accept you, you know. But we all believe in this Yoruba tradition, but then your IFA might say something that my ego don't like.
Right.
Your IFA might say something my ego don't like. And then now we fight. And at the same time, IFA, the tradition, the oracle, it's all underlying. It's underwriting it. How can our own tradition underwrite our disunity?
That was a deep statement. It sounds like your answer basically is that the biggest thing that we need to do as quote unquote Yoruba people is be a collective, is be on one accord, is have a common move towards a common goal and come together and have more unity. That's what it sounds like.
But you can't have a common goal. How can you have a common goal and you don't even know who you are?
You gotta do history.
You got to do history.
Gotta do history.
You got to know where you are. I can hear Dick Gregory standing behind me right now. Like, this is probably for children, so I can't talk like Brother Richard Gregory. Talk like him. But we have never known our own. We have never experienced our own. Whenever we experience our own, we are bringing somebody else's thoughts into it. Just like marriage. Men and women think about marriage. You're not thinking about your own form. You're thinking about, like 90% of Nigerians do. Thinking about Snow White and Hansel and Gretel. You're thinking about,
the fairy tale, the TV growing up, the movies.
Yeah, dun 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 dun, here comes the bride. That's a Wagnerian opera.
Not African culture.
No way near. And so we continue, it seems, to misappropriate and forget, because we don't know history, that our elders codified everything already. Codify our approaches, codify how to structure outlying communities, codified how to structure future kings and future chiefs. They codified it a long time ago, but unscrupulous people sought to divide us back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s because they wanted to be aggrandized. They wanted to be somebody. Everybody came from OBA Oloyotunji. Even the brother in New York, Ra Unefer Amen. He wrote the book, the Metu Neter. He started with OBA Oloyotunji. Why they wasn't working together all the way through?
Right.
The last poet started with OBA Oloyotunji. Why they wasn't working all the way through? Esther Rose started with OBA Oloyotunji. Why she wasn't working from Good Times? Esther Rose was OBA Oloyotunji's first client.
Okay.
First downfall he ever did was with the lady, the mother on Good Times, Esther Rose.
Wow.
And then you fast forward today, you got Forrest Whitaker, you got all these rappers, you got all these influential people, India Ari, all these influential people, and they won't push the culture. But let there be a Jewish person with, well, they don't really talk about the culture, and they kind of mad at Kanye for doing it. They keep it on the low. They just operate. They ain't got time to talk. A Jewish person will pass all y'all niggas by before he buys something from you to buy something from the Jew he don't like on the other side of town and they're 12 miles away.
That's what their culture
That's
is.
their culture.
And that is the fervor we have to have. Because remember, I know there's a lot going on in Israel and things and the concepts, I don't want to step on the toes, which I don't even mind. However, the concepts that when OBA Oloyotunji decided to create something like this, a Cosa Nostra, something for us, by us,
Right.
a FUBU for us, by us. Right, that's what it is, a FUBU. It came from the Zionist concept. Because OBA Oloyotunji loved the concept of Zionism. It was like, well, here is a people who is about their own language. They were enslaved, and they want to put it all back together and keep it for themselves and keep it tight. You go to a Jewish synagogue right now, tell me you want to be a priest. They will say, the Jewish religion is the Jewish people. That's what they're going to tell you. You can't join it.
Right.
So OBA Oloyotunji wanted to create that. So knowing our history gives value to your thoughts about things.
Okay.
It gives texture. It gives perspective. It makes you just nostalgic about so many things. And then when you see other cultures and you know your culture thoroughly, you want to mimic them in the best way. You want to follow their greatest operational procedures.
Right.
Okay?
Just like a business.
Same way. Why would you have a burger shop, you see what homeboy doing, but you don't do what he do?
Right.
Now you got goat burgers. And you ain't making the same money. So we making goat burgers.
So I'm hearing a school. That's what I'm hearing.
I say, you gotta have a school.
School.
You gotta have a school. You gotta have a school. But then if we make a school, what are you gonna do? You're gonna copy the Europeans. You're gonna sit a kid down in a chair for 8 hours. If I sit you down in a chair for 8 hours, guess what? You better have, like, you know what I mean, a big career making a lot of money after that, because you won't do it. How can you tell a child that you gotta sit there for 12 years and never see a dollar? When you sit there for 4 years now, you working in a university, or I mean, out the university in a technical field or what have you. It's all upside down. You think Steve Jobs sent his kids to school? Answer me.
No, he didn't.
You think these oligarchs send their children to school? No. They send them to a concept in their mind. It's called a Montessori school. You ain't sitting in the
So
chair.
our own concept of school.
Our
fits
own
needs.
concept has to. You're not slow, Baba.
Say,
Our own concept has to be there. And not just with education,
Right.
with economics, with marriage,
right.
with business, with death, with friends, with family. Not just for your own personal reading for that week.
Right.
So, if they don't send in the elite of the elite, because remember I said we have to look at other groups and see how they're doing it, mimic their style. So let's deal with the elite of the elite. Let's start at the top. They do not deal with religion. And by the elites, I don't mean Bill Gates. I'm talking about the black people who live on the island of St. Thomas and St. John. They flourish. I've been there, I've seen them. You don't see one Ileke, you don't hear one story about what's my Orisa today or my IFA said I can't talk to you. The culture that they have is still based on Africa. It involves collective economics, working together,
Right.
and just performing in a collective way.
Right.
But you got to give it to them. They do have a constraint that's making them perform that way. That's because they're an island.
Right.
Ain't got nothing water around. So you got to work
Out of
with each other.
necessity.
Right.
But if I could leave your Elay and go to his Elay,
Right.
guess what? I don't
Right.
need you. And guess what he gonna do? Hate on you, talk about you, and then charge me double.
Right. We got too many options.
Got too many options.
Right.
And the options today, it's clear. that the options today in terms of priests, we have untrained priests, unregulated, especially unregulated.
Uncharactered, if that's a word.
Unprepared, unvisioned.
You know, Abba Sejuman always taught us that, I remember him always saying that a priest is a custodian of his culture, his history. That's what a priest is, not somebody that just do ritual work all day. But you gotta know your history as a priest, because all the people that come to you, you gotta be able to preach the history to them. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I know personally that I always kind of like keyed on that's what made me want to be a priest. Not because I saw a bunch of rituals and stuff being done. I had that under the belt because I was being called to do that anyway. Mm-hmm. But the history was the key. You got to know your history. How you gonna each one of your godchildren? You're supposed to be able to liberate from the Christian mindset. Mm-hmm. Each one of the clients that come to us, we're supposed to liberate them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But if we do not have a good grasp on what the culture is, what the institutions are that support human life and daily human life are, we're stuck.
We're stuck.
We can't just constantly give people dafas, and ebars. Mm-hmm. It's like you know. African people are the only people, instead of just jumping over the cliff or making a bridge for the cliff, they want to pray to get over the cliff. Pray to get over the cliff. No,
you gotta work.
Prayer without works.
Mm-hmm. Prayer without works. It's just like the Christian.
And now everyone has turned the Yoruba tradition and religion in America into a get out of jail free card.
Oh boy.
Get out of jail free card. I deal with more African people who are in prison and they trying to get out than people trying to get married, babies coming into the culture, priests coming in. It's the jail thing is the biggest thing. But
to test
I
to
can
it,
understand it. I can understand why.
Test to it.
You know what? Yeah, America's the only country that lock up their people this way. There's so many statistics that point toward why that's such an issue. No wonder it's prevalent in our lives.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, but here's the point. Instead of teaching, this is what I've seen over the years, over my 43, 4, 5 plus years in the culture. We would well, first of all, by Funto, I said, we're going to stop giving drug dealers Orisa. Mm-hmm. Right? That was back in the 80s. Talk about it. So drug dealers couldn't get Orisa.
Drug dealers is the priests now. Okay, never mind. They are.
Think about it, brother.
Not only do they have Orisa, they're giving Orisa, but that's the next episode. We only had time to cover that right now.
Well, I'll put it like this. We're only as dope and as great as what other groups say about us. If we think that we are entering outer connected community and we just great. Oh, he finds it. No, that's an ego. Ego. And you know in E5 there's always a battle between ego and Ori. So we got stuck with ego. It's what the other people say about us. Right. Why are we in the national news and making big headlines like, President Trump want to be the next president, so he got to go talk to the King of Oloyotunji to get the 6 million Yoruba votes in America.
Right, that part.
That's what they doing at the evangelical churches. We're missing the boat with this culture. And this so quote unquote religion. Missing the whole boat because it's about political and economic growth.
Martin Luther King got assassinated when he switched his program from civil rights to economics. That's when they had to take him out. They said, we can't let this nigga do this. He got all the black people in all the churches. He got too much influence. We got to get rid of him now because now he's starting
thinking like he's thinking, really thinking now. Yeah. Yes.
Well, yeah. the movement of the Yoruba in North America had everything to do with separating. You should say integration, right? Talk about integration. Well, Dr. King and Walter King, who was Oba's first name, Walter King, born 1 year apart. This one wanted integration, this one wanted separation. 2 years after they met each other. Oba Adefunmi said, now we got to go in the woods and segregate ourselves.
Right.
Create our own. And people say, well, 1,000 people lived in the village back in the day. Well, yeah, they did until they found out you got to create your own. They went back to the cracker. Why you think they left the hoods to go and sit in at cracker tables? Why? Because they didn't want to build their own. Niggas never like to build their own. They want to go in and have it already structured. But see, if we had listened to Booker T. Washington, instead of my dear brother W.E.B. Du Bois, we would have things to show for it.
Right.
Huh? Right. We're living Du Bois' legacy, you know that, right? This Du Bois legacy. All this education about the white people, dress nice, talk white, don't speak Geechee or patois or bourgeoisie or the boule. All them cats come from over there.
The boule.
The bourgeoisie. So had Booker T. Washington hadn't died and he got it pushed through, even though Booker T was funded by white people, they was all funded by white people. Yeah, we all in here funded by white people if you have a job. I mean, basically, right? They didn't like Booker T because Booker T said, let's learn trades, let's learn culture, business, agriculture, let's learn the foundational thing. No, the white boys was behind them. It was the black people who said, don't listen to Booker T.
Right.
Because Booker T trying to turn y'all back into slaves.
Yeah.
Now look who got the trade jobs.
Right.
Now today, it's not black people. It's everybody but blacks in America.
They don't teach it in school.
They don't teach it in school. And Tuskegee University was founded by Bookie, and he taught skills and trade. A man, Bookie, there's a passage in his book that said he caught a man reading the book of French, trying to learn French. He said, nigga, what you learning French for? You can't even build your own house. You should be spending your time studying brick masonry. And he would go and show people how to lay brick. And so Oloyotunji was founded on the principles of Booker T, not W.E.B. Booker T had my dad lit. Oba Adefunmi was lit because Booker T said, if we just cast your bucket down where you stand. You ever heard that phrase? You know what it means? Cast your bucket down means throw that bucket down in the well, in your own well, and drink from your, because if you throw your bucket on the ground, you ain't gonna get nothing. But if you throw that bucket in the well, and you pull it up, you got water right beneath your feet. Don't go north, stay south.
Right.
Corner southern agriculture. You can be responsible for the shipping, the packaging, the manufacturing, just like Archer Dames Midland, just like Monsanto, just like all the big wigs.
But they got rich off of us, but we were doing the labor. So now, if we're the owners and we're doing these things now, there's wealth in that, right?
Of course, yes. Of course, yes.
And towards the end of Dr. King's life, he quote, I fear I've integrated my people into a burning house. They had to get rid of him because he got it. He was waking up and he had to go because he was too influential. They could not have the masses of black people catching on to that.
He was, Dr. King was a great prophet for his time. And he definitely represented the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Movement. However, simultaneously, the Yoruba culture movement was taking ground at the same time. One movement was televised, the other one was not. That's the only difference. They both started in the inner cities, except that the Yoruba movement primarily kicked off in Harlem, and Harlem, USA. And within those times, everybody was vying for the ears of black people. Back in those days, my dad said Farrakhan was a fiddle player. He didn't have too much to say back then. However, you had Michaud's bookstore. Michaud would come out and talk on the soapbox. Malcolm X would come out and talk on the soapbox. Because remember, the Yoruba temple was right here, and Malcolm X temple was right here. But before the Yoruba temple started, the Yorubas in America got their start in temple number 7. Yeah. So all of our Yoruba rituals, that the first Bembe in America was probably in temple number 7. Because Malcolm allowed them to come in, and everybody said, Malcolm. You Omowale. He got that name from Oba Oloyotunji.
Right.
Oba Oloyotunji gave Malcolm that name. You see, if you ever see Stokely Carmichael in Barie, that he got it from the Yoruba temple. And so Malcolm X got a reading from Oba Oloyotunji. Huh? But he wouldn't come get the reading personally because, you know, Muslims ain't supposed to be, you know, even though he had the Yoruba people in his thing, the Muslims wouldn't show up that night. Right. So if the Yoruba people want to use the mosque, I believe, I don't know if this is true, but you can talk with, the best person on that subject is Dr. Smalls. Dr. Smalls was in charge of the temple.
Okay.
You know, Dr.
I've been
Smalls,
talking to him.
He was in charge of the temple.
Professor James Smalls, right?
Professor James Smalls. He was at the head for Malcolm, and he used to let the Yorubas in the temple to use it and do what they wanted to.
Okay.
Right. So that was the
Dr.
connection.
Smalls, if you're watching, we definitely need your insight on that. We'll be reaching out to you soon.
Oh, yeah. And Dr. Smalls said, use him up. Use him up, because we don't use up our elders. But the point I was getting to in terms of the Yorubas in Harlem is that they did everything. When I finally learned the history, I said, wow. The Yorubas of Harlem were running for parliamentary positions in the city of Harlem, in Uptown. Oba Oloyotunji was running for mayor. Some of the other chief, Ogunsheye and Chief Oyelumi, they were running for councilman seats. They called it the Elijah Party. So the Yoruba movement already had a political party based on local sustenance and dealing with the local community, helping people out, feeding people like the Black Panthers did. Elijah. Elijah means the one line that fights. Elijah. Elijah. Eli is lion, Jah is the fight. So the Elijah Party. And they wore black fezzes. You know, like the Moors wear fezzes, everybody was into fezzes. With a little ump in the corner right here on the right side. Yeah, pointing to the southeast or whatever point Egypt was. And so all this has been done already. Everything we're trying to do in every city, once you know, I'm trying to start a temple, or I'm trying to get initiated. Well, you know, I've been in the culture 3 years, this, that. How do I do it? Why are people asking how do they do it? It should be available because it's been done already. It's already been codified. Once you have the codification, you just need to follow through.
The elders set the platform.
They set the platform, and they set the bar high and the platform thorough. If people decide to know it, and there's very few people who know it now. It's in books and little small things here and there, but no one knows it. But I sit back every day and I say, wow, if we can get this concept down and understood and move it around, we wouldn't have half of the buffoonery we got now. People would have a particular structure to work by. And going to Nigeria and getting the structure and coming back is not the way, people. Okay, Nigeria got a whole boatload of issues over there. Yeah. People say, well, I'm Isheshe now. You are Omo Oduduwa. You are Omo Oduduwa. When people say they're Isheshe, you start that I'm a Santeria again. Remember, the first divisions was between Santeria, now that and African American. Now the new division is African Americans against each other with a concept of Isheshe that we know everything and nobody else know better because I done been in Nigeria. Well, look how Nigeria looks. Look how the place is. Look. And I talk to people just like I talk to Nigeria. I know plenty of people. I talk to the Albans much the same way. They got to get off their asses and make the spirituality look great. They come to Oloyotunji and say, well, y'all have to develop Oloyotunji. Well, you got to develop Ondo. You got to develop Ijebuta. You got to develop all the problems. We all have the same problem. But see, here's the difference. Africans don't know what they're losing, and we don't know what we lost. I think if we bring it together in the middle, we'd be kind of dope. All of the talk about separation between Africans in America is foolishness. Only because Africans in African America I mean, Africans disparage us in a lot of ways. I will say that for true because I hear them and I join them sometimes because we some real niggas. However, it's only because we have not an understanding of our culture.
Yes.
When you go to Nigeria, you better be able to articulate the culture in your feelings, in your body language. Just like if you go to the hood, you better not look like a tourist.
Right.
Okay? If you go to the hood, you better not look like a Poindexter.
Yeah.
You're taking advantage of. You got to have that. You got to have that look. And if Nigerians know you ain't got it, and all you want to talk about is Orisa and getting their bar, they will serve it to you like this all day long.
All day.
I've been to Nigeria a trillion times. They don't serve me no bar. I think I had 2 bars done in Nigeria. But the point I'm trying to make is that if your own people can't give it to you, why get it from somebody else? Because they created it for you, right? It's like, your mama make your bed every day and cook for you, but you don't trust living in the house.
So, KBAC, what parts of the culture do you think that, based on your father's vision and what he started, what do you think we've done well and what we've not done well, based on his vision?
Well, and see, that's the thing. Everybody want a leader to follow. Malcolm, these people. Then once they find out about their inequities, I don't deal with them no more. Kwanzaa started out as a good thing till everybody found out Maulana Karinga was working with the FBI and all them weird things that were going on. Now it's a different story. So if you just take the person, an individual, the ego out of the movement, all we have to do is sit back and look at other groups and see how successful they are, what they do, how they show up on time to things. What they do, how they pool, how they work together.
Right.
Okay. Because if I go to another church and see how dope they are and how amazing Jesus is for these people. Now, Jesus don't make rich people, but Jesus make people rich when they come together. That's what I notice about the church. Because I'm doing the church a lot now. And we can talk about that later on another day. But the reason is that you have to mine. You got to go and mine gold mines. You got to go and by gold mines, I don't mean money. I mean where camaraderie, fellowship, understanding, collectivity exists, and work with it.
Yeah.
It's something we can learn from other groups in America, whether they're Christians, whether they're Muslims, whether they're Buddhists, whether they're Hindus, no matter what. We're all in the diaspora. We're not in the homelands. You know why we're not in the homelands? Because most of our traditional homelands, whether you're Christian, you're about African, Muslim, it's all, loused up. It's all loused up. It's terrible places to be, for the most part.
Yeah.
And so we are in a new world. We are a cosmic race. We are not wholly African. We are not wholly European. We are not wholly native. We are, for the first time on the planet Earth, a cosmic race. Those 2 oceans separated this land from everything else. From Africa, from Europe, from Asia, from the Polynesian Islands, Russia. This was separated. Until Africans came in through South America before Columbus, it started blending. And here we are today. So therefore, we have to encompass we have to understand and utilize as a platform our entire experience. You might have some Aztec energy you could work with.
Right.
Huh? Africans don't have that privilege back in Africa.
True.
Okay? You are an African American. Y'all are African American. Everybody say yeah.
Yeah.
One more time, like black people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can practice Senegalese culture, Gambian culture, Nigerian culture. Guess why? Because you got all of those bloodlines in you. From the West Coast to the center. You can relate with everybody. However, we cannot misappropriate the culture.
Right.
So you just can't be a radical king overnight. You can't be a radical priest overnight. And you can't just make yourself, Mr. Hullabaloo, doing a thing and all in a vibing thing, We can't do it like that. Because other groups structure themselves very good. And I'm going to close on this one. African people, if you study our history, especially in the kingdom of Segu, Mali, and the kingdom of Ghana, not the state of Ghana, but the kingdom of Ghana, and stretched all the way up into Mauritania.
Right.
And so each one of those great kingdoms always fell because of lack of organizational planning. If you study our history as African people, we suffer from that. The Yimbo do 50 years out, right?
Oh, yeah.
Easy, like on the whim. However, it goes bad. And so if we're going to structure ourselves off of ego and we big and bad, well, we need to have a structure for success in being big and bad, to stay big and bad, right? And that comes from structuring ourselves based on our culture for the succession. Successive leaders and successive, we have to structure ourselves in that way.
One of my mentors, Dr. George Fraser, he says that white people plan for 3 generations minimum, and black people planning for Saturday night. Right? So,
what's wrong with Saturday night?
you look at, like you just mentioned, some other cultures that have advanced beyond us, especially in the realm of economics. Our Mexican brothers and sisters, the Chinese, they are way beyond us now in economics. If you look, they have their own plazas, they got their own credit unions. They can almost exist within their own people in their own community, right? They can come here. They don't even have to learn to speak English, some of them don't, because they can sustain themselves and maintain and live. They can make money, they can clothe themselves, they can feed themselves, and they can house themselves and educate themselves.
And you never hear about their religion.
That's
it.
That
you never hear about their religion, and they're not only getting together to have a bembe, to have a religious something.
Right.
They're getting together to drop off soy sauce to you and drop off clothing to you.
There you go.
In these trucks with all Chinese writing on them.
Yep.
Look at other groups and see what they do. Look, we on the same page. We on the same page with that. Because growing up in Oloyotunji, we didn't have that education that everybody else got. We had a Montessori school basically, where you learned hands-on.
Instruction.
And I couldn't sit still, so I always got kicked out of class. And if you got kicked out of class, you go to work and you learn skills, skill trades. It was the best thing in the world. And so, once again, just gotta go back to learning where we were before this started. If you want to be a good FOI, you gotta read Elijah Muhammad through and through. And then you go through town, you see them guys out there in the hot suits in the winter summertime selling bean pies, selling papers. Dedication. And what we lost was in the movement, dedication was there. Because through the Islam, civil rights movement, and Yoruba movement all started at the same time, pretty much in the same place. Okay? So they all had the same tenets, and they all borrowed from each other. They all leaned on each other. Things they didn't like, they didn't use. Things we didn't like, we didn't use. But if we don't know that, then we won't band together. I have people saying, well, why can't he going to a Christian church? What he doing hanging with the Muslims or at the Indian church? I thought he was Yoruba. But if you just ignorant of our history as a people and how we develop, you wouldn't know that the Yoruba people are a developmental group. We still got to get our name out there. The people don't know our name as Yoruba people in America and out here. So we got to go to everything. You got to go to everybody's everything, every rally, every dance, every festival. And I've been doing that my whole life. And we still ain't known. Imagine if everyone did that. Imagine if everyone did that.
And it's starting to happen now, but we have to be able to leverage and capitalize on it, So that's really the key. So as we do future episodes, we will be talking more about some of the movements and the things that we will be doing at Oloyotunji Kingdom and how you can help through your expertise, through your knowledge, through volunteering, through whatever you can do to help build this kingdom. Because one of the things that really bothers me is the school. Like you said, our kids aren't even safe. You don't know what's gonna happen.
No, the number
In school.
one killer of America for children is what? What disease or whatever, what issue kills children more in America than anything else? Anybody in the background,
Right
anybody
now,
in the room?
I think it's depression and suicide, and you got all this stuff going on.
Anybody in the room? What is the number one killer of children in America?
Sugar.
Sugar. Sugar keep us alive.
Not that white sugar.
The number one killer of children in America are guns.
Guns.
That's it.
Yeah.
Manufactured weapons. That's the number one killer of children in your country. Okay? So, to send your children to a public school is like sending them to a Russian roulette.
Rolling the dice.
Rolling the dice. And that's where we are. And as Yoruba people,
It's
we
sad.
should be at the forefront. We have all of this IFA, all of this old badass spirituality. Well, let's put it to work. Put it to work and put up some institutions, some buildings, some brick and mortar.
Right.
And people are doing it.
Right.
I know people are doing it right now. You got the black people in Georgia just bought 90 acres, 7 families. What do you think they're doing right now? Sleeping? They might be because they're black and they're receiving it. It's just what we do. I suffer from Oloyotunji all the time. Black people love to say, let's do it. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, man, we didn't make $1 million yet. What we gonna do?
Yeah.
It don't work like that. It's life investment. You gotta invest yourself.
Yeah. As we bring this podcast to a close, Kabiyesi Oloyotunji, it's been a great pleasure and an honor to have you here on the show on Let's Talk IFA. And just take us out with some closing words, please, if you would. Bye-bye.
Well, closing words. There should be opening words. Open people up to thinking differently. You know, we've been taught what to think instead of how to think. Because guess how I know? Because you can go from community to community and hear the same trope of conversation. Oh, I don't deal with that person. I ain't saying that person. I don't like that person. I don't do well. I don't do well. It's always ego versus ego. And then you bring new people into the tradition and you say, hey, this is what we got for you. Hey, they're gonna peep it out.
They confused.
They can peep it out. They can see it. They're gonna see it after a while. You know, you can't hide it. It's what it does. You know, I would tell lots of people to don't call me, but if you see me somewhere, ask a good question because I probably got a dynamic answer that could assist you outside of what you've been taught to think. Because I've been taught how to think. Okay? So we have to teach people how to think. Because we all on autopilot. We just wake up and go. Everybody want to turn the tradition, paint Jesus Yoruba. So basically, here we are as Black American people. I left the church 6 months ago, but you know, like, Obatala is my saving grace. Oh Lord, no, you just got the same language and everything. I feel that, that's cool. Make it your own experience.
Right.
However, these things are best executed. Our lives are best executed, and our communities are best sustained when we go with the codifications rather than, you know, the newbies. There's tons of good babalawos and tons of good priests out there doing good work, and they're overworked because they're not more. So as OBA Oloyotunji said many years ago, he told us when we were kids back in the early 80s. He said, yeah, one day you never have to work for Yimbos. You should never have to do that unless you choose to. The culture will sustain you. Back in the 80s, he said, because everywhere I go now, somebody has heard of Oloyotunji. I was back in the 80s. Yeah, that was over 30-something years ago. So now, here we are as recipients of a great legacy. Maybe I would employ people, and not just people in Oloyotunji or recipients. We are recipients of a great legacy. As long as you got that divination, that water, and that blood in your life, get what? You're a recipient of a good, thing. But a good inheritance. But we have to discover that inheritance. We have to discover the wealth of that inheritance and treat it like the Johnson & Johnson children do. Huh? Treat it like all of those great companies that the Kraft family, the Kellogg family, the Walmart family. Huh? They venerate their legacy. Not because Walmart brings smiles to people. Walmart brings death and pillage and destroy the earth. But guess what? They stick by it. So we can stick by something that sustains the earth, builds community, helps each other. Why? Because our history and tradition is great. It didn't have no whores, no prostitutes, no homelessness, no orphans, no drugs.
Didn't have prisons.
Didn't even have alcohol. You had beer, but you didn't have grain. Didn't have prisons. No indebtedness. And guess what? There was abundance for all. In terms of housing and food. And we have to create communities and towns like the 90 people, the people with the 90 acres in Georgia. You got to create communities and towns because then you can govern your daily motions and operations yourself.
Right.
If you succeed, it's on you. If you fail, it's on you. But that is the whole key of the legacy. Right. Not just developing another Ile, you paying rent to another group. You living in another group side of town. Why don't all of the Yorubas in every city get one side of town and stick together in there? Yeah. You might throw sticks at each other the first couple of weeks, but guess what? You get used to it, and it'll be great.
And we can all do it together.
You can do it together.
Candomblé, Santeria, Isese Lagba, Oloyotunji, whatever. There's more in common than we have differences. So we're gonna sign out on that note. Again, we want to thank our guest, Kabiyesi Oloyotunji Adejuyigbe.
And I'm IFA Bunche.
And this is Let's Talk IFA. We want to tell everyone to we wish peace and blessings for all of our listeners, for you and your families going into the new year. May you have long life, good health. May you have peace of mind. And may we have all Ire. Give thanks and praise to Olodumare. Ashe. Ashe. Odabo for now. Signing out.